during the tapping session, we acknowledge these things, we identify them, but once we've uncovered them and identified them, now we actually can take the power away from them. And when we do that, now we can release that power and empower ourselves to get back into control of things and not let those things run us.
Welcome to the Self Within podcast, where we will look to ancient traditions and modern insights to seek guidance, knowledge, and practical tools to help us reconnect with our true selves. Join me, your host, as we explore various topics from mindfulness and meditation to energy healing, astrology, and much more. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Self Within. Today, I am joined by Leo McCarthy, who is an EFT practitioner. He is also a medium, a licensed massage therapist, Reiki master teacher, and a shaman. Welcome, Leo.
Thank you.
So in today's episode, we're going to explore emotional freedom techniques tapping, which is a body-based tool that works with the nervous system and the body's energy pathways to release stored stress, emotional patterns, and limiting beliefs. So Leo, tell me a little bit more about EFT tapping, because I've definitely heard about this. I think at some point I've explored it for myself and tried doing some little tapping exercises that I may have come across on YouTube or somewhere online. But yeah, tell me a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so it's a modality that it's not actually that old. It's probably less than 100 years old. And it's rooted in psychology and Eastern medicine. So it combines Eastern medicine where there's a sequence of 9 major tapping points that come from acupuncture or acupressure points along the energy meridian channels. And the psychology part comes in where that's combined with the tapping, and the tapping is moving energy, but the psychology part is working in affirmations and reframing negative narratives, negative limiting beliefs, and reframing those into positive narratives and different, more positive perspectives.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Now, how did you even get into tapping in the first place?
I've listened to a lot of podcasts in the past, and I feel like I might have heard an interview. So there is an organization called the Tapping Solution, and they're like a big name in tapping. And I can't think of the person's name, but I heard their interview and I heard about tapping. So I decided to download one of their ebooks and listen to it about tapping. And I thought it was really cool how simple it was to release some of these symptoms that we might be experiencing, emotional triggers, trauma, limiting beliefs that we all live with and are going through. And I reached a point where I was dealing with my own stuff, and I deal with anxiety, I deal with depression and some other stuff. But with just life being chaotic and some of my own personal life, I was dealing with heavy emotions, and one of them being anger. And it's complicated. But I decided I had met someone that introduced me to someone that was an EFT tapping practitioner. And I decided I've been trying to work on kind of reducing the frequency and the intensity of my emotional triggers with anger towards my daughter that I had been having. And my wife and I had been having conversations, and I was reacting more than I wanted to about different situations. And I had tried other things myself. I practice Reiki, so I've done self-Reiki. I've gotten Reiki treatments, but not any one particular modality necessarily fixes everything. We have a toolbox, right? I decided to schedule an EFT tapping session with this person, and with the intention of wanting to reduce the intensity and the frequency of maybe some of these emotional triggers that I was having around anger. And she took me through the session, and it was a lot of visualization and tapping on these different points. And later on in the interview, I'll kind of go over those. But she took me through tapping on these points and kind of asking me some questions about acknowledging, let's say, like a situation. So we talked a little bit about, I was angry at my daughter about this. And then we go a little deeper with the layer as far as like giving some additional statement prompts to peel away the layers. So like, I'm angry about this situation. And when I get angry about this, it makes me feel this. And then when I feel this, it causes me to think this. And when I think that, it makes me feel this. So you kind of digging away the
Right.
layers to get from your conscious mind into the subconscious. And the thing about EFT tapping is you're processing things very quickly. So you don't get a chance to like guess or think too much about what you're
Mm.
going to say. You're just kind of letting it come forward. And so I was able to release some things around the anger. And I got done with the session and we had some post conversation about the session. And I felt better. But on my drive home, it was really interesting. When I was connecting these deeper layers in the session, now on my drive home, I was thinking about other things that were coming up connected to, let's say, anger or anxiety.
Oh,
And I was actually connecting dots to those things without realizing we kind of opened Pandora's box to all this other stuff. And I was making all these really cool connections and having all these little epiphanies
mm.
of like, wow, that's why I felt this way about this situation. Or, wow, I didn't know that's why I reacted about this way. I had such a profound effect on me. Like, I felt like I want more people to experience this. So I decided to actually get certified in it so that I could actually practice it with other people and share it, just the power of it. That's what I did. I got certified with an accredited course and I've been practicing it now for a few years. And I found it really helpful in a lot of similar reactions from clients that I had on my own session, that it revealed a lot of things to them and me. And what it does also, these emotions, these triggers, this trauma, these limiting beliefs, during the tapping session, we acknowledge these things, we identify them, but once we've kind of uncovered them and identified them, now we actually can take the power away from them they have over us.
Right.
And when
Right.
we do that, now we can release that power and empower ourselves to get back into control of things and not let those things run us. Now, it doesn't mean I never have anxiety. It doesn't mean I never have anger about things, but EFT tapping is now part of my toolbox.
I think what I like about the idea of tapping too is that it can travel with you, right? So
It can.
yeah, like once you learn a particular sequence, let's say, you could be doing it in the car, you could be doing it like wherever, right? You don't necessarily always, I think having a session is super important, but then afterwards you can sort of keep up with the maintenance on your own. And that to me is, again, to your point about empowering, that's also pretty empowering, right? You're doing it on yourself.
Yeah, because going through a session, you also learn how to do the tapping, and the
Right.
practitioner can reinforce it for you. And yes, you can do it on your own. And I literally have done it driving.
Yeah.
I have like anxiety sometimes driving places that I don't know where I'm going or whatever. Or I could be driving somewhere, but I could be thinking about something that happened earlier. And that emotion while I'm driving might start expanding
Mm.
and intensifying. So I've been able to drive and actually just be tapping on myself, acknowledging what I'm feeling at the moment, and kind of dig into that and go a little bit deeper. And by the time I get down to it, I've uncovered that again. And in tapping and moving the energy, I've released the intensity and I've reduced the intensity. And now, like, I've gotten to a point from driving, doing the tapping, I get to my destination, I'm parked, and I feel much better.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. Emotions are energy in motion. And then being able to process them through the tapping. And I hear a lot about processing our emotions, and there are so many ways of doing that, right? You can shake it out, dance it out. Tapping is one of them, but there is definitely something to that, being able to truly not just verbally get it out of our system, but physically get it out of our system through just movement.
Yeah. And what I found too, like you have the 9 major points. And since we're talking about it, let me go through those real
Yeah.
quick with you. So we have like this point right here on like the ridge of the hand, the karate chop area. That's kind of like the first point where you're tapping. And this is where your basic EFT statement starts at this point, where the practitioner will say this to you and you'll repeat it. So you might say something like, even though I feel really angry about this situation, I deeply and completely accept myself.
Mm.
And even though this makes me angry, I still love myself. So you're kind of acknowledging the emotion, and you're also acknowledging that even though you're feeling it, it's okay. And you give yourself permission, and you still love yourself, you still accept yourself for feeling it. And so from here, then you move on to like the corner of the eyebrow right here. And you might go from that original statement and say, it makes me really angry when, and you fill in the blank. And so we're starting with the stuff that's in our conscious mind, digging deeper, and you're processing quickly. So when you're responding, we're not giving you too much time to think about your response. You're just letting it come out. So that way we can go deeper and let the subconscious kind of reveal itself. So from here, then we go here to the outside of the eye, and then the cheekbone, and then under the nose, and under the bottom lip. And then you can make a C with your hand, and you're kind of over the clavicles or over like the heart center, and then your side, and then the top of your head. And then you again go through that sequence. Now, what I found practicing EFT, it's about moving energy, getting stuff moving, and then using the psychology to go along with that to reveal things and acknowledge things. I found like during a session, we may be going through the sequence, but we might get to a point where we're right over the heart in the clavicle area, and we just kind of sit here, we stay here, but we continue to process. So I found it becomes no longer necessary to keep moving through the points, because now we've got some inertia with the energy where it's flowing and it's moving now, and we can stay on a point, because not only does the tapping like move energy, but it also helps us switch our nervous system from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic system. Those times when I said I've been able to do the tapping in the car, you don't take both hands off the wheel. So you still have one hand on the wheel, and you could have the other hand tapping over your clavicle or your chest. And you could just stay right here the whole time processing and never go through all these different points, because it's not always necessary. It's just like the tapping itself on your body helps ground you, helps bring you present, and helps, again, switch the nervous system from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic. You become calmer, more grounded. You can breathe easier, less anxiety, less stress, and you kind of just recalibrate, if that makes sense.
I know you mentioned that there are certain affirmations that you're doing when you're tapping, but what you were just sharing with this last example. So let's say you are in the car and you're continuing to tap on your chest, for example. Would you repeat a particular affirmation in this space, or is the tapping enough to bring your nervous system into the parasympathetic?
I think the psychology hand in hand with the tapping is, I think it's necessary, because, you know, yes, the tapping helps ground you and brings you present, but you need the psychology, you need the affirmations and the statement prompts to bring your conscious, uncover the subconscious, bring that subconscious stuff forward to the conscious, to get yourself to the point, to acknowledge what's happening, get to the root of it, and then take power away from what's creating the anxiety,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Now, is there a sequence to every single affirmation, or can you start pretty much anywhere? And again, I'm kind of focusing on the chest area, but like if you
Yeah.
started tapping in the chest area, is there a particular affirmation that's connected to that? Or does it really just depend on maybe what you're going through, or maybe there's a particular tapping area you have to start with?
Yeah. So let me answer that with, so when I take someone through a tapping session, I do an intake. And then we do an inventory about what's going on now in your life. And we talk about what symptoms or side effects are you dealing with. And this could be like physically, emotionally, spiritually. What emotions, what emotional triggers are you dealing with? What trauma are you dealing with? It could be acute trauma, it could be trauma from your past. And then what limiting beliefs, like, what's that limiting belief that's running in your head? And I look at that and I sort of analyze that, and I work very intuitively to figure out where I'm being directed on which place to start. So if I feel like this emotional trigger will give us the most bang for our buck, I might start with that, like anxiety about flying or anxiety about driving somewhere, right? And so I would initially start what's the obvious thing that we're talking about. And then we dig deeper. So I start with, I'm anxious about driving, and it makes me anxious driving because I don't know where I'm going, or I'm worried about my GPS not working. And then I would slip into, in addition to that, I might say, the other thing that makes me anxious is, and you're going to fill in the blank, and you're going to bring whatever comes forward from your subconscious to your conscious mind. So we're going to look at many things that make you anxious. So there's a whole web of things that fuel anxiety. And so when we uncover these different points, we see where everything's coming from, and we can understand that it's not just the anxiety about driving or flying somewhere, but it's the anxiety about, I don't know, someone not showing up, or anxiety of being left alone, or anxiety about being lost. And so you connect the dots to these different situations, and you might connect the dots to a specific memory. And then you tap into that memory and you go a little bit deeper to find what's the root of that. And then you bring it back forward. And then we're like, okay, now we know we were anxious in this memory because of this. We can take this, and now we're looking at present day. We're anxious about driving somewhere, but both are anxiety. But now you see anxieties connected. And so now present day, when we're anxious about driving, we can understand, why is that intensity of the anxiety so strong? And it's so strong because it's fueled by not just the anxiety from driving, but it's all this history of anxiety. It's fueling it.
Right. It's almost like you're getting to the seed, to like
Yes.
what started it, what caused it in the first place. I've talked so much about the subconscious too on this podcast. It really all goes back to that, and so much of it stems there. And I think we go on about our day, about our routines, not necessarily thinking about these things, where in a way we've learned to hide them, to block them from our memory so that we don't have to keep going back into that trauma.
And that's another
trauma area.
conversation about shadows, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But it is really, I guess empowering is a word, but once you figure out where it comes from, there is a sense of relief. Sometimes it's like a shock. This happened to me recently with a session that I was doing, where I came in with a particular thing, and then we're continuing to peel back the onion. And I finally get to this place where I was like, I had no idea that one incident caused so much anger to
Right.
reside in my body, that then every single time that I interacted with these people, that anger would come out, and it would come out in a passive aggressive way, but it was still there. And then that was causing me to feel guilt for acting that way. And I was just not and that was the thing. I wasn't understanding why. And of course, like for me, I was like, oh, I'm such a bad person. And why do I act this way? And why do I feel this way? So yeah, so there ends up being so much confusion that just comes out of not knowing. And I think once you're able to reveal and figure out the stem of it, it is empowering. That I think that is,
Yeah. And when we're empowered, we get a sense of control back.
yes, you can choose what to do next.
Right.
Right. And I think a lot of that requires, I think, probably some more work too, because awareness
It
is
does.
definitely important, but
Mhm.
awareness doesn't always,
That's kind of a starting place, right?
yeah, the awareness is a starting place and it definitely gives you more compassion, I think, for yourself and for other people once you've gotten there. And then, of course, there's lots of tools to figure out, well, okay, now how do I deal with that anger? Like, how do I, check myself? How do I control it better and manage it? I always like to say exploding outward.
Yeah. And there's going to be times when EFT doesn't always work for you. And
Right.
that's why it's important to have other
The
things in your
toolbox.
toolbox, right?
Yes. Yes. But I always find that there is, even if it doesn't work fully, and this is what I've learned with lots of these different modalities, is that you
Takes
may
the edge
try
off.
something, right? You might try something, you're like, oh, it didn't do it for me, right? And that's totally fine. I've seen many clients that will come in for one session, maybe two sessions, and then it's done, and then they move on. And I always encourage them to, well, one, I love recommending other people to them because I'm the first person to say, like, I may not be your solution for everything. And you
Hmm.
should go on to somebody else. And it
Hmm.
could be tapping, it could be something else that works. And yeah, I think it's taking the edge off, or maybe even learning something about yourself, or maybe the connecting the dots that you talked about that you wouldn't otherwise have
Right.
gotten.
When I've done my own tapping on myself, I make these connections and it doesn't take long either. I could be doing my own self tapping on myself for 10 minutes and I might have a new epiphany about
Mm,
something that I didn't realize before. And so just bringing that to light can help kind of move things forward too.
right. Do you find that there are some common misconceptions that people have about tapping or how to use it, or maybe using it on their own?
I think some of the misconceptions, well, let me back up. Not a misconception, but I think with any type of, when you're dealing with energy and energy work in different modalities, you have to come into that situation to try that modality and you have to be open to it and you have to be ready to try it out emotionally and mentally. If you just go into a situation, say, I'm going to try this tapping, but I don't expect it to work,
Yeah.
you may not authentically dig a little bit deeper and you may let your ego rule the session and not allow your subconscious to come through. So
Mm,
you may not be successful, but if you can be open and just have a curiosity about it, so maybe you don't know, but just be curious about it, you may say, okay, let's see, maybe this will surprise me. So go through the motions and let your guard down and try it out. You may surprise yourself.
I love that you're bringing this up because I had people that have come to me, and the one that I'm most recently was, I'm open, but I don't think this is going to work. And immediately I just knew, I was like, okay, they say they're open,
You
right?
can
Their
feel it.
rational mind is saying, I'm going to try it, I'm open, but, and as soon as you add the word but,
But
you're not.
you kind of put your ego on autopilot and your ego's got guard.
Yes, you've already closed yourself off,
Hmm.
right? And so anyway, I mean, of course I've had those experiences, and then I have to, I sort of, in a way, I deal with it in that moment. I'm like, okay, I understand that's where they're at. But yeah, it's so interesting that you brought that up. I mean, the other thing too, this other person that I had come through, they similarly, they're like, well, I've heard good things and I have someone that comes to you and they love it and all this stuff. And then, but similarly, they're like, well, I'm not going to tell you everything. I want to see if you can figure it out. It felt like it was a test. And I always say, like, look, if you don't really believe in energy work or energy healing, that's fine, right? It's not for everyone. But if you're going to go into a situation where you truly do want to experience it and try it for yourself, really ask yourself, are you telling yourself that you're open or are you truly not? And then, second, I would say, if you don't want to share, like one of the biggest things you can do is truly share what's going on. Imagine going to a doctor and saying, I'm not going to tell you why I'm here. I want you to guess based on your expertise and the fact
Hmm.
that you have all
Hmm.
these certifications and licenses
Hmm.
and so forth.
Hmm.
You would leave there with nothing. They wouldn't be able to prescribe you medicine. They wouldn't be able to prescribe or even check you out in the right way. So I would say similarly, just with energy healing, it's the same, right?
Yeah, I
Going
would
in.
add
Yeah.
also, it's kind of like talk therapy. I've been doing therapy for years, but if you go into talk therapy and you're not honest and open, it's not really going to be effective for you and you're not going to really get the most out of it for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And I do find that energy healing works much more powerfully, I would
Mhm.
say, if you are open to not just experiencing it, but also getting everything off. And I understand why people are reserved. Of course, you've never met someone for the first time.
Mhm.
It's a
Mhm.
little strange to like air
Yeah,
everything out.
right.
And that's why it takes time. But at the same time, if you're able to be vulnerable, be open, there's a lot that can come out of that.
Definitely.
Hey, I know you're really into this episode right now, but I want to take a moment to highlight something new and amazing that I recently discovered. It is the Antohai Quantum Reiki Tarot deck. Now, this isn't your average tarot deck. What makes it unique is that it is an all-in-one tarot deck. It is a traditional tarot, modified tarot, oracle deck, hybrid deck, and customizable deck all in one. Created by shamanic master and quantum healer Axel Carrasquillo, this deck blends ancient alchemy and modern neuroscience. Quantum Reiki is also embedded in the cards, which enhances the accuracy of the readings. I've been working with this deck only a short time, and I can tell you that so far the insights received have been spot on. So, whether you're a seasoned reader or just beginning your tarot journey, this deck will provide you with a new layer of guidance like you've never experienced before. So, grab your copy of the Antohai Quantum Reiki Tarot on Etsy, or take a look below at the description for a link. Now, back to the episode. We talked a lot about empowerment. Talk to me a little bit about that, kind of taking back your power when it comes to just working through a lot of these emotions that might be coming up.
To do with our power, like I see this quite often with doing Reiki energy work, where people have gone through things in their life where their power was taken from them. And it was taken from them either as a child, it could have been like a traumatic event, but there's like a learned behavior when it comes to power also, because there's like a belief that builds in us to believe that we don't have our power kind of thing. And that either comes from our environment, our parents, people we're connected to, different relationships and stuff like that. And what I found is I had a situation with someone that I used tapping with, and they had been through a lot of trauma and been through different things in their life. And the things that they did go through in their life, they felt in this might not be even in their conscious mind until we maybe uncovered it, but there may be like a worthiness factor or good enough factor. And that's all connected to power also. And we have to get to a point where we can kind of start to reframe the story that we've been hearing for years or however long, or whatever situation we learned that we didn't have power at that moment, but we didn't know that we could actually get it back. Because a lot of people don't realize they can get their power back. And so that's where the EFT tapping, when someone starts to feel empowered by connecting all these dots, it gives them a sense of control back. And then we just need to work at like, okay, now how do we maintain our power once we've called our power back? And then that leads to confidence. And so that's why a lot of people lack confidence in themselves, either personally or professionally, or getting out of their comfort zone. It's because there's a power dynamic. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, it does. I mean, yeah, power is an interesting word. I think if we really think about the word itself, it makes sense to know what it means and to know what it is. But when you think about it within the context of yourself, like where are you lacking empowerment? Where was power taken away from you? I think it's
Mhm.
not as obvious and it's not as clear.
Yeah. And there's a connection like directly with power and a sense of control.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking about something that, of course, I'm like, this came up for me recently where, and I think I may have shared this too in a separate interview, but it still like comes up in my thoughts where I had done this. It was learning how to read tarot intuitively, and the instructor had a whole bunch of different major arcana cards on posters printed out. And she asked us to, without knowing what that card was, just by the image itself, to either to stand by the one that we were most drawn to. So we all sort of went around the room and we ended up picking one. And as we're going around and trying to explain what each card means, she asked, how many of you went to this one poster and just walked away from it? Like you were just completely repelled from it. And a number of us raised our hands, and I was one of them. And I can't remember the exact tarot card that it was, but it had to do with power. And so she pretty much said, okay, homework for you is really ask yourself, why are you afraid of power? What is making you fearful of this card? Because the card itself is not, whatever the message was, it wasn't a negative card, right? And again, no card is, I would say, fully negative, right? There's all the pros and cons, light and shadows. So that has always stuck with me. And it's like, what about power is fearful for me? But yeah, that's maybe
I
we
would,
can
I
dig
would,
into that with.
yeah. Well, what I would say about that is like the connection with fear and power is whatever moment that we either lost or there was a shift in our power. Because power was involved, power's kind of a trigger.
Mm,
Do you know what I mean? Good or bad,
yeah.
power's a trigger. And so it either way, it's power is big, it's energy. And we can be fearful of having it, we can be fearful of losing it, but the sheer fact of power being the common denominator, like when you were describing the teacher asking you guys to go stand near that card, and you guys went towards that card, but then you felt something, and it was probably like a power dynamic with what that image was projecting to you, which was probably projecting to you an emphasis of power. And there was probably a sense subconsciously with worthiness,
Yeah, totally.
right?
Totally. That's definitely an area that I'm very conscious of and I have to work at. And I'm like, I know that that's definitely something that, yeah, that comes up for me. Worthiness, control, power. Those are all words that I resonate with
Hmm.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was connecting some dots. I was like, oh, okay. I think I know. I think I know where.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was lost it, but it felt like I didn't fully have it.
We can be like partially charged with our power, but not fully charged,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. And the more I think about it, it was almost like this feeling of there was an uncertainty with it, like an uncertainty
Hmm.
of what to do with it, how far to push with it. Yeah. And the times that I did try to go a little bit further with my power, like try to put myself in certain situations where I could maybe have more power, it was sort of like I would get my wrist slapped. It's like,
Yeah. So like the whole power dynamic with power being the common denominator, like the uncertainty, right? The idea that your power was either shifted from you or taken from you at one point, it was a negative association to it.
right. So now it's like, well, I don't want it at all.
And that negative association is kind of the loudest thing you hear when it comes to power.
Right. And why is it that we focus so much on the negative?
I think because it's louder.
It's louder. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like it's kind of like, I don't know, what's coming to mind is the word texture. So, like, if you think about, like, I have these oil paintings that I bought years ago, and the artist, when they painted them on the canvas, they gave the picture texture by layering like the paint. So it actually, if you were to run your fingers over it, right, you would feel all the bumps and different things of the texture. So like I have a lot of pictures with trees in them. And so you could see and feel like the bark on the trees, where I feel like negativity has a certain texture to it that gets your attention more than, let's say, a calm ocean.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you think about, even if you're getting into like in a relationship, right? Like if you're having a fight with your partner, it's so easy to bring up the past when there
It
were
is.
similar patterns, when there was continued like negative behavior versus all of the other positive moments, right? I mean, there's always a mix of,
Like I was saying earlier, like the negativity is louder. Let's say we go out to dinner, right? And you have a bad experience. That's what we talk about, right? We never
right,
talk, unless it's extreme, we don't talk as much about the great experiences.
right, which is why like you're more likely to leave a negative review than you are to leave a
Right.
positive review because
Right.
you're like
Exactly.
so
Right.
angry, right? The
Right.
anger has the
Right.
fire and it drives you.
There's just such a strong emotion behind it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Tell me more about what you do and like how can people learn more about working with you and other maybe any offers that you have?
Yeah. So in addition to the EFT tapping that I offer, I can do that in person or remotely.
Mhm.
I offer Reiki sessions. So the style of Reiki I practice is Holy Fire. So I can do in person or distant Reiki sessions. I teach all three levels of Holy Fire 3 Reiki classes. Usually I do those in person, but I have taught them like over COVID. I did teach some of those remotely. I also do some guided meditations. I do some shamanic work like soul retrievals. And I offer some mentoring and coaching where we incorporate the EFT tapping in those coaching programs also, because it's a really effective modality to get to the bottom of and get to the root of some of these things that are holding us back, whether it's
Yeah.
these emotional triggers, limiting beliefs. It's a quick way to process things, to move stuff so that we can move forward.
Mm,
And so I offer these coaching programs in either a 3-month, a 6-month, or a 9-month program.
nice. Yeah. I think the
Um,
consistency too helps.
yep. I'm also a co host for the Mystery of the Soul podcast, which we'll probably have to have you on ours as well.
Thanks. What's the podcast about?
It's kind of like our tagline is like where curiosity meets spirituality.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. We
Okay.
explore a lot of things, and there's so many things that affect our soul, right?
Oh, wow. You can go deep with that one.
You can. And the other thing that I have a project I'm working on this year too, I'm creating a platform called Soul Searching Sanctuary, where it's
Mhm.
going to be a platform that will have a listing for other practitioners that people can work with. And there'll be memberships that people can join, a gold tier or a platinum tier, and they'll have access to these other practitioners. You'll have access to maybe programs, course offerings, discounts on what these other providers are providing. So, like you said earlier, if I'm not the right practitioner for
Right.
you, there's always someone else that might be the right fit, right? Because we're not the right fit for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And so people can reach me probably in the best way is they can go to my website. It's leojmccarthy.com. So www.leojmccarthy.com.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I will be sure to post a link to your website in the show notes so people can go and check it out. And any final words on anything that we talked about today?
I think one of the things that I would say is if you're interested in trying something, a modality, whether it's EFT tapping, Reiki, hypnosis, whatever, just if you can become more curious about it and let that lead you instead of fear of getting out of your comfort zone to try it, you may surprise yourself.
Yeah, well said. Well, thank you, Leo. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your wisdom, your thoughts on tapping.
All right. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. If you're interested in becoming a client and working with me, visit me at nunatherapy.com or follow me on social media at nunatherapy for regular content and inspiration. Until next time.